Get out, he sneered. You're ruining my night. He drove away, leaving her shivering in the mud, thinking her life was over. But he made a fatal mistake. He didn't check the rearview mirror, because the 12 black armored SUVs behind him didn't stop for the storm. They stopped for her. Some men throw away diamonds because they think they are glass. When a social climbing executive dumps his girlfriend on a flooded highway, he thinks he's saving his reputation. Instead, he just handed the Alpha King the one thing he has been hunting for a century: his fated mate. Chapter 1. The rain wasn't just falling. It was hammering against the roof of the luxury SUV like it wanted to break in. Mia flinched. Every drop sounded like a stone hitting the metal. She sat in the passenger seat, knees pressed together, hands folded tight in her lap. She was trying to be small, invisible. If she took up less space, maybe Mark wouldn't notice she was there. "You're breathing too loud," Mark muttered. He didn't look at her. His knuckles were white on the leather steering wheel. "The elite have sensitive hearing, Mia. Do not embarrass me tonight with your—" "I'm sorry," she whispered. Her voice trembled. "It's just the storm. I can't see the road." "That is why I am driving," he snapped. "And you are sitting there looking pretty. Did you fix your lipstick? You chewed it off again." Mia reached for her purse with shaking fingers. She felt sick. Her stomach was doing flips, twisting into knots that made it hard to breathe. The car smelled like him. Sharp cologne and expensive leather. It was a smell that used to make her feel safe, but now it just made her feel trapped. She pulled out the tube of red lipstick. Candy apple red. Mark picked it out. He said her natural color was too pale, too plain, just like her background. The car hit a deep puddle. The SUV swerved. Mia gasped. A short, sharp sound, and the lipstick slipped from her fingers. It bounced off the center console and landed on the floor mat. "For God's sake, Mia." Mark slammed his hand on the dashboard. "Can you not do anything right? This is a $100,000 vehicle." "I'm sorry. I'll get it." She scrambled to reach down. Her fingers brushed the plush carpet. Tears pricked her eyes, hot and stinging. She blinked them back. "Don't cry. He hates it when you cry. It makes his eyes look bad." It was never enough. She had spent 2 years trying to be the woman Mark wanted, the perfect doll, the silent partner, but she was just Mia, clumsy, anxious Mia. "Leave it," he commanded. His voice was cold, ice cold. "You'll just smudge it on the seat. You can fix your face when we get to the gala, if we ever get there." He checked his watch, glancing away from the rain-slicked highway. "The Alpha King is rumored to be attending tonight. Do you understand what that means? It means my promotion depends on this evening going perfectly." Her lungs burned. It felt like a giant hand was squeezing the air out of her. "I promise, Mark. I won't say a word. I'll just smile." "Good, because your chatter is draining." He turned up the radio to drown out the sound of the rain. Classical music filled the small space, but it didn't help. The tension was thick, heavy, suffocating. Mia looked out the window. The world outside was a blur of gray and black. Maybe it was fate, or maybe it was just bad luck. But she reached for her water bottle. Her throat was so dry it hurt. She just needed a sip to stop the coughing fit she felt coming on. Her hand shook. The cap wasn't screwed on tight. In the span of a breath, the bottle slipped. Water, icy, cold water, splashed out. It didn't hit the floor. It hit the seat. The beige, custom Italian leather seat. A dark stain bloomed instantly right between her legs and spread onto the cushion. The music cut out. The rain faded into background noise. The only sound left in the universe was the sharp intake of Mark's breath. Her heart skipped. "Mark, He didn't speak. He just hit the brakes. The heavy SUV skidded on the wet asphalt, tires screeching against the storm, pulling hard onto the muddy shoulder of the highway. "Mark?" she whispered. He unlocked the doors. The sound was a loud click that echoed in the silence. "Get out." The ground beneath her seemed to vanish. She stared at him, sure she had heard wrong. "What?" I said. "Get out." He turned to her then. His face wasn't red. It was calm. Scary calm. "You are wet, you are a mess, and you have ruined the leather. I am not pulling up to the gala with a walking disaster." "But it's pouring," she stammered, looking at the dark woods outside. "We're miles from the city. Mark, please." "Call an Uber," he said, staring straight ahead. "Get out, Mia, before I drag you out." Her body moved on instinct. She grabbed her purse and pushed the door open. The wind ripped it from her hand. The rain hit her like a slap, freezing, soaking her silk dress in seconds. She stepped out into the mud in her high heels. Slam. The door closed. Before the words left her lips, the engine roared. Mark didn't look back. He peeled away, tires spraying mud over her legs, his taillights fading into the darkness. She was alone.
Meanwhile, 3 miles back, the world was quiet. Inside the back of the armored limousine, the storm was just a picture on a screen. The glass was 3 inches thick, bulletproof, bomb-proof, soundproof. King Alaric Torvak didn't feel the cold. He didn't feel the wind. He felt nothing. He sat alone on the black leather bench, a glass of amber whiskey in his hand. He hadn't taken a sip in an hour. He just watched the liquid swirl. "Ita, to the gala, is 10 minutes, Your Majesty." The driver's voice came over the intercom. Smooth, respectful, fearful. Alaric didn't answer. He didn't have to. Silence stretched between them, heavy and commanding. He was the alpha of alphas, the king of the shifter world. He had money that could buy countries and power that could crush armies. Yet, he felt like a ghost haunting his own life. He looked down at the tablet resting on his knee. Security reports, rogue wolf sightings near the northern border, pack disputes over territory. It was all noise, meaningless noise. He was bored, a deep, aching boredom that settled in his bones and made his wolf pace restlessly inside his mind. "Hunt," his wolf grumbled. "Run, kill, mot." Alaric sighed, rubbing his temples. "There is no mate," he whispered to the empty car. "We have looked for 100 years, you beast. She doesn't exist." His wolf snarled in his head, scratching at the back of his eyes. The beast was angry tonight. The moon was hidden behind the clouds, but the pull was there. It was always there, an empty space in his soul that nothing, not war, not gold, not fear could fill. He tapped the screen to close the report. He saw his own reflection in the dark glass. Golden eyes, hard lines, a face that had forgotten how to smile. He looked like a statue, cold and stone. Then, the air in the car changed. It wasn't a sound. It wasn't a sight. It was a smell. As if the wind shifted, the advanced filtration system of the limo pulled in air from outside. Usually, it filtered out the smog and the dirt. But something slipped through. Alaric froze. The glass of whiskey cracked in his hand. Snap! Liquid poured over his fingers, but he didn't feel it. He only smelled her. It was faint, buried under the smell of wet asphalt and pine needles. But it was there. It hit him like a physical blow to the chest. Rain, vanilla, and sadness. It was the sweetest thing he had ever smelled. It smelled like home. It smelled like mine. His pulse stuttered, then hammered against his ribs like a war drum. "Mate!" The roar inside his head was so loud it blurred his vision. His wolf didn't just wake up. It exploded. It took control. His human side vanished, buried under a tidal wave of possessive instinct. Without thinking, he slammed his fist into the partition separating him from the driver. The reinforced glass spiderwebbed. "Stop." The command wasn't human. It was the alpha voice. It vibrated the chassis of the car. It commanded obedience on a cellular level. As if pulled by a string, the driver slammed on the brakes. The massive limousine screeched. The tires locked up. The entire motorcade behind them, 12 black SUVs filled with lethal guards, skidded to a synchronized, chaotic halt. The tension broke. Alaric didn't wait for the car to stop completely. He didn't wait for his guards to secure the perimeter. He didn't care about the protocol. He didn't care about the gala. He shoved the door open. The hinge groaned under his strength. The door flew outward, nearly ripped from the frame. The storm rushed in. The wind howled. The rain soaked his expensive Italian suit in an instant. But Alaric didn't care. He stepped out onto the highway. His eyes, glowing bright, molten gold, scanned the darkness. Where is she? He could hear a heartbeat, rapid, terrified, a little bird fluttering in the dark. A growl rose in her throat, no, in his throat, a deep, rumbling sound that made the pavement vibrate beneath his boots. Someone had hurt her. He could smell the salt of her tears mixed with the rain. Her soul answered his. He felt her fear across the distance, a cold spike in his own chest. Find her, he growled to the night, and then he started running.
The cold was a living thing. It had teeth. It bit through her thin silk dress, chewing on her skin until she was numb. Mia hugged herself, her arms wrapped tight around her chest, trying to hold the broken pieces of herself together. She was walking. She didn't know where. Just away. Her heels had sunk into the mud 5 minutes ago. She had kicked them off. Now she was barefoot on the sharp gravel of the shoulder. Her feet were bleeding. She couldn't feel them anymore. Stupid, she sobbed, the word torn away by the wind. So stupid. She wasn't crying because of the cold. She was crying because Mark was right. She was a mess. She had ruined his night. She had ruined the seat. She deserved this. Maybe it was fate. Maybe she was just meant to be trash on the side of the road. A truck roared past, throwing a wall of dirty water over her. She stumbled, falling to her knees on the wet stones. The impact jarred her bones. She scraped her palms. She didn't get up. She just curled into a ball on the side of the highway. The rain matted her hair to her face. Mascara ran down her cheeks in black rivers. She didn't know what scared her more, dying out here in the dark, or Mark coming back and being angry that she wasn't waiting where he left her. Please, she whispered to the sky. Someone, please. Then, the ground began to shake. It started as a hum, a vibration in the pebbles under her cheek. Thrum, thrum, thrum. Mia lifted her head. Through the curtain of rain, she saw lights. Not just one pair. Dozens. A wave of white LED beams cut through the storm. They were moving fast. Too fast. It looked like a dragon made of steel and light charging down the highway. Her breath caught. She tried to scramble back, pushing herself toward the ditch. They were going to hit her. They wouldn't see her in the black dress. But then, the lead car swerved. It didn't just stop. It slammed to a halt with a sound like a gunshot. The tires smoked against the wet road. The cars behind it fanned out, blocking the entire highway. It was a wall of black metal. Time stood still. Mia froze, crouching in the mud like a frightened animal. The back door of the middle car, a limousine the size of a tank, flew open. A man stepped out. He was huge. That was the first thing her brain registered. He was a giant in a dark suit, his shoulders broad enough to block out the headlights. He didn't have an umbrella. He didn't run for cover. He stood in the pouring rain, perfectly still. As if the world narrowed, he turned his head slowly. And he looked, right at her. Mia stopped breathing. Even from this distance, she could see his eyes. They weren't brown. They weren't blue. They were gold, burning, glowing gold, like fire in the darkness. Her wolf stirred weight. She didn't have a wolf. She was human. But something deep inside her belly, something primal and ancient, woke up and screamed, yes. The man took a step toward her, then another. He wasn't walking. He was stalking. Her instincts surged. Run. Hide. But she couldn't move. Her legs were jelly. He was in front of her in seconds. Up close, he was terrifying, beautiful and terrifying. Rainwater dripped from his black hair, running down the sharp angles of his face. He looked angry, furious. He looked at her bruised knees, her bare, bleeding feet, the ruin of her dress. A sound ripped out of his chest, a growl. It was low and dark, and it made Mia's teeth rattle. "Who?" he demanded. His voice was deep, rough like gravel, vibrating through her very bones. Mia trembled, looking up at him. I... He dropped to his knees in the mud. He didn't care about his suit. He reached out, his hands hovering over her shoulders, large and trembling. The moment their eyes locked, the cold vanished. Heat, and searing, impossible heat, radiated from him. "Who did this to you?" he roared, the sound drowning out the thunder. Before she could speak, he ripped off his heavy wool coat. It smelled like rain and pine and power. He wrapped it around her, engulfing her in warmth. He scooped her up into his arms as if she weighed nothing. Mia gasped, clutching the lapels of his shirt. "I have you," he whispered into her hair. His voice changed. It wasn't a roar anymore. It was a vow. "I have you, little one, and I am never letting you go." Her world tilted again, but this time, she wasn't falling. She was rising.
The heavy door of the limousine slammed shut, sealing out the storm. Silence. The roar of the rain was gone, replaced by the soft hum of the engine and the terrified breathing of the woman in his arms. Alaric didn't let her go. He couldn't. His wolf was prowling just beneath his skin, snarling at the empty air, demanding to know who had dared to touch his mate. "Drive," Alaric growled. "Where to, Your Majesty?" The driver's voice shook over the intercom. "The gala." Alaric looked down at the shivering bundle in his lap. "We have a party to crash." The car lurched forward, smooth and powerful. Alaric adjusted the heavy wool coat around her. She was freezing. Her skin was like ice. Her lips were blue. Without warning, a wave of rage crashed through him. It was a hot, molten thing that made his vision blur red. He wanted to hunt. He wanted to tear something apart. Then, she moved. She nestled closer to his chest, seeking his warmth. Her small hand clutched his shirt. "I'm ruining your suit," she whispered. Her voice was cracked, broken. Alaric let out a harsh breath. "I can buy 1,000 suits. I cannot buy you." He reached for the decanter of water on the side table, pouring a glass with one hand. He held it to her lips. She drank greedily, water spilling down her chin. He wiped it away with his thumb. Her skin was soft. So incredibly soft. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice rough. "Mia." "Mia." He tasted the name. It felt right. "Who left you on the road, Mia?" She stiffened. The scent of fear spiked acrid and sharp. "Mark." I spilled water in his car. He was worried about the elite. He didn't want to look bad. Alaric froze. The elite? He was the king of the elite. And this, Mark, and discarded the most precious creature on earth to impress him? The irony tasted like blood. In that moment, Alaric made a decision. He wasn't just going to kill Mark. Killing was too easy. He was going to destroy him. He was going to take everything Mark thought he wanted and burn it to ash. "You are shaking," Alaric murmured. He shifted her on his lap, reaching for the heated blanket stored in the console. He wrapped it around her legs, covering her muddy, bleeding feet. Her chest ached. He could feel it through the bond, the heartbreak, the belief that she was worthless. "He said I was a mess," she whispered, tears leaking from her eyes again. "He said I was clumsy," Alaric growled, a low vibrato in his chest. "He is a fool, a blind, pathetic fool, and tonight you will show him exactly what he threw away." He pressed a button on the wall. A panel slid open, revealing a wardrobe of emergency formal wear silks, velvets, jewels. He always kept it stocked for diplomatic emergencies. But this was destiny. "We are 10 minutes away," Alaric said, his golden eyes locking onto hers. "Dry your eyes, little one. Tears are for those who have lost. And tonight, you have won."
The inside of the car was bigger than her apartment. Mia blinked, trying to make sense of the blur. 10 minutes ago, she was dying in a ditch. Now, she was sitting on heated leather, wrapped in cashmere, drinking water from a crystal glass. Her thoughts spun. She looked at the man holding her. He was terrifyingly large. His jaw was square, covered in dark stubble. His eyes were still glowing, a liquid gold that seemed to see right through her skin. He shouldn't be real. "Here," he said. His voice was deep, like thunder rolling in the distance. He held out a dress. It wasn't just a dress. It was a masterpiece. Midnight blue silk that shimmered like water. "Put this on," he commanded gently. "And these." He opened a velvet box. A necklace. Diamonds. Massive, glittering diamonds that caught the amber light of the car and fractured it into 1,000 rainbows. I can't," Mia stammered. She pulled the blanket tighter. "This is too much. I don't have any money. I can't pay you back." The man Alaric paused. He looked confused. Then, his expression darkened. "You think this is a transaction? Isn't it?" she whispered. "Mark always said everything has a cost. If you want the nice dinner, you have to be quiet. If you want the ride, you have to be perfect." Alaric made a sound in his throat. It sounded like a snarl. "Mark is a worm," he said. He leaned in close. His scent, pine, rain, and musk wrapped around her, making her head dizzy. "There is no cost, Mia. You are not a service to be bought. You are." He stopped. He looked at her like she was the only star in a black sky. "You are mine," he finished softly. Her breath caught in her throat. Mine? What did that mean? She barely knew him. Without a conscious thought, she reached out and took the dress. The silk was cool against her fingers. She changed in the back of the moving car, turning away as he politely looked out the window. She slipped into the silk. It fit perfectly, like it was made for her. She put on the necklace. The weight of the diamonds felt grounding against her collarbone. She looked at her reflection in the darkened window. She didn't look like the girl who was crying in the mud. She looked powerful. "We are here," Alaric said. The car slowed. Through the window, she saw the lights of the Grand Hotel, the gala. Panic seized her throat. "He's in there," she gasped. "Mark, he'll be there." "Good," Alaric said. He turned to her and his smile was not nice. It was lethal. "Let him see." He reached out and wiped a smudge of dirt from her cheek. His thumb lingered on her skin. "Do not look down, Mia," he whispered. "You are with the king now. You look at no one but me." The car stopped. Her pulse raced. She was terrified. But looking at him, seeing the absolute certainty in his golden eyes, she felt something new. She felt safe.
The valet opened the door, but Alaric didn't move yet. He sat for a second, inhaling the scent of the night. He could smell the champagne inside, the perfume, and the wolves. Dozens of them. Pack elders, alphas from minor packs. And somewhere in that crowd, the worm named Mark. Alaric stepped out. The cameras flashed. The paparazzi were shouting, but they went silent the moment they saw his face. They sensed the predator. He turned and held out his hand. Mia hesitated. She looked at the red carpet like it was a trap. But then, she took a breath. She placed her hand in his. Her fingers were small, fragile, but her grip was firm. "Good girl." He pulled her out. The crowd gasped. They saw the dress, the diamonds, but mostly, they saw the scent. Alaric had flooded her with his pheromones. To every wolf with a nose, she smelled like him. She smelled like the Alpha King's property. "Walk with me," he murmured. They reached the massive double doors of the ballroom. The doormen bowed low, their eyes wide with fear. They threw the doors open. The atmosphere shattered. The room had been buzzing with laughter and music. But as Alaric stepped across the threshold with Mia on his arm, silence slammed into the room like a physical weight. The music died. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. Every head turned. Alaric kept his head high. He walked Mia down the center of the room. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. He saw the shock on the faces of the elders. He saw the jealousy on the faces of the she-wolves. And then, he saw him. Mark. He was standing near the bar, holding a drink, laughing with a group of investors. He looked smug, clean, dry. Mark turned, feeling the silence. His eyes landed on Alaric. His face paled. He started to bow, but then he saw Mia. Mark's eyes bulged. He dropped his glass. Smash. Red wine splattered across the floor, looking like blood. Mark took a step forward, his brain clearly unable to process what he was seeing. "Mia?" he squeaked. "Honey? I was so worried." The audacity. The room held its breath. Mark put on a fake, trembling smile. He started to walk toward them, his hands out. "Your Majesty, thank you. My girlfriend. She was feeling ill. I was frantically looking for her." Liar. Alaric didn't speak. He just stopped walking. The air grew heavy, charged with static. Alaric released his aura. It wasn't a gentle wave. It was a hammer. He pushed his dominance out into the room, suffocating and absolute. Guests dropped to their knees. Some wheezed, unable to breathe under the pressure of his power. Mark froze. He grabbed his throat, choking. Alaric stepped between Mia and the insect. He loomed over Mark, letting his eyes burn with the full force of the wolf. "Girlfriend?" Alaric asked softly. His voice carried to every corner of the silent room. He reached out, grabbing Mark by the lapels of his cheap suit. He lifted him, 1 inch, 2 inches. Mark's feet dangled off the floor. "You are mistaken," Alaric purred, the sound terrifyingly calm. "This woman is not your girlfriend." Mark clawed at Alaric's hands, his face turning purple. "You threw something away on the highway, human," Alaric whispered, leaning in so only Mark and the wolves with super hearing could hear. "I do not like litter in my kingdom." He tightened his grip. "Especially," Alaric snarled, his wolf flashing in his eyes, "when it touches what belongs to me." He dropped Mark. The man crumbled to the floor, gasping for air, looking up in absolute terror. Alaric turned his back on him. He offered his arm to Mia. "Shall we get a drink, my queen?" As the echo faded, the room remained silent, watching the king and the girl he had pulled from the rain ascend the stairs to the throne.
The sunlight hit her face like a physical weight, dragging her out of a deep, dreamless sleep. Mia blinked, her eyelashes fluttering against her cheeks. For a second, just a single, confused second, she thought she was back in her cramped apartment. She expected to hear the dripping faucet in the bathroom. She expected to smell the stale coffee Mark always burned. But then, she rolled over. Her hand didn't hit a cold wall. It brushed against sheets that felt like spun water. Silk. Pure, impossible silk. Mia sat up, her heart giving a frantic little kick against her ribs. This wasn't her room. The space was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city skyline, turning the skyscrapers into jagged teeth of glass and steel. The air smelled different here. Clean, expensive, like cedar and fresh linen. Memories crashed into her. The rain, the headlights, the gold eyes, the king. "Oh God," she whispered, bringing her hands to her face. It wasn't a dream. She scrambled out of the massive bed. Her feet sank into a carpet so thick it felt like walking on moss. She was wearing a t-shirt, not hers. It was huge, black, and smelled like him. Pine and rain and power. She needed to leave. She needed to clean up. Mark used to say she was useless in the morning until she had fixed herself. Panic spiked in her chest. She looked around for a broom, a rag, anything to make herself useful. If she wasn't useful, she was a burden, and burdens got left on the side of the road. She spotted her ruined dress from last night draped over a chair. It was clean, Mended. Perfect. Next, the heavy oak door creaked open. Mia flinched, backing up against the window. A woman walked in. She was older, with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that were sharp but kind. She carried a silver tray with a steaming pot of coffee and a plate of fruit. "Good morning, Miss Vance," the woman said. She dipped her head. Not a nod, a bow. A genuine bow. I'm sorry," Mia stammered, smoothing the oversized shirt down her thighs. "I overslept. I can help with that. Let me take the tray." She rushed forward, her hands shaking. The woman stepped back, looking horrified. "Oh, no, miss. You do not carry trays. You are the guest." "I don't mind," Mia insisted, reaching for the silver handle. "Really, I'm clumsy, but I can. Miss Vance," the woman's voice was firm, "His Majesty would skin me alive if I let you lift a finger. His Majesty." The words hung in the air, heavy and terrifying. Mia pulled her hand back as if the silver was hot. "Where is he?" "The Alpha is in the training wing," the woman said, setting the tray down on a marble table. "He requested you join him when you wake. There are clothes in the closet. Everything has been adjusted to your size." The woman bowed again and backed out of the room, closing the door with a soft click. Mia stood alone in the silence. She walked to the closet. It was bigger than her entire kitchen. Rows of soft sweaters, jeans, and sundresses hung waiting. No stiff office wear, no uncomfortable heels. Just comfort. Why? What did he want? Men like Mark wanted status. Men like Alaric, kings. Surely they wanted something more. Maybe it was fate playing a cruel joke, giving her a taste of heaven before kicking her back down to hell. She grabbed a soft gray sweater and pulled it on. It felt like a hug. She walked to the door. Her hand hovered over the knob. She didn't know what scared her more. That he would turn out to be a monster like Mark, or that he wouldn't be. That he would be exactly what he seemed. Because if he was real, if this kindness was real, then she had no idea how to survive it.
Thwack. The sound was like a gunshot in the echoey room. Alaric didn't pause. He pivoted on his heel, driving his shin into the heavy bag. The reinforced leather groaned. The chain rattling above shrieked in protest. Thwack. He hit it again. Harder. The bag split. Sand spilled out onto the gym floor, pouring like an hourglass, counting down the time he had left before he lost his mind. "That is the third bag this week. Alaric," a voice drawled from the doorway. Alaric didn't turn. He stood panting, sweat dripping down his bare back. His skin felt too tight. His wolf was prowling under the surface, agitated, scratching at his ribs. "It was weak," Alaric growled. He grabbed a towel and wiped his face. Like everything else in this city, Silas, his beta and oldest friend, walked into the room. Silas was big, but next to Alaric, he looked human. He stepped over the pile of sand. "The council is asking questions," Silas said, his tone serious. "About the girl, about the scene at the gala. You publicly claimed a human, Alaric, without a mating ceremony. The elders are concerned." "Let them be concerned," Alaric snapped. He threw the towel into the corner. "They can choke on their concern." "It's not just the elders." Silas stopped. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "We found this on Mark's phone. Our hackers cracked it an hour ago." Alaric snatched the paper. It was a transcript of a text message, sent 3 minutes before Mark kicked Mia out of the car. From unknown ID message. "Is the package ready? The northern pack is hungry. Dump her where we agreed." The temperature in the room plummeted. Alaric went still, deadly still. The paper crumpled in his fist, turning to dust. "It wasn't an accident," Alaric whispered. The realization was a cold knife in his gut. The spill, the argument, it was staged. "Mark was paid," Silas confirmed. "Alpha Kale has been trying to get a spy into your inner circle for years. He knew you were looking for a mate. He thought if he left a vulnerable human in your territory, you might take her in as a pet, a weakness he could exploit. Alaric's vision turned red. A growl ripped through him, not human, but pure animal. It shook the glass mirrors on the wall. They hadn't just hurt her, they had hunted her. They used her innocence as bait for a trap. And Mark, that insect, had sold her like cattle. "Where is she?" Alaric demanded. His voice was vibrating, distorted by the shift threatening to take over. "She's awake," Silas said, stepping back warily. "In the West Wing. Alaric, control yourself. You smell like murder. You will scare her." "I am murder," Alaric snarled. He paced the room, his claws lengthening, scraping grooves into the hardwood floor. Protect. Kill. Protect. He needed to see her. He needed to make sure she was safe. He needed to wash the scent of betrayal off her skin and cover her in his own. He moved toward the door. "Alaric," Silas warned. "Your eyes." "I don't care," Alaric said. He shoved past his beta. "She needs to know what I am. If she is to stay, she needs to know the monster she is sleeping next to."
The hallway was long and silent. Mia walked softly, her bare feet making no sound on the marble. She followed the noise she had heard earlier, the slamming, the growling. It sounded dangerous. Her instincts screamed at her to turn around, to go back to the safe room with the silk sheets. But something pulled her forward, a tug in her chest, a magnetic north that pointed straight down the hall. She reached an open set of double doors. The smell hit her first: sweat, musk, and that sharp, electric scent of ozone that happened right before a lightning strike. She stepped inside. The room was a gym, but it looked like a war zone. A heavy punching bag lay ripped open on the floor, sand bleeding out. And, in the center of the room, stood Alaric. He was shirtless. Mia's breath caught in her throat. He was massive. Muscles coiled under his skin like steel cables. Scars faint. Silver lines crisscrossed his back, telling stories of violence she couldn't imagine. He was breathing hard. His hands were clenched at his sides, as if he sensed her. He froze. "Don't come in," he said. His voice was low, rough. It sounded like stones grinding together. Mia didn't move. She couldn't. "Alaric." He turned slowly. Mia gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. His eyes weren't just gold. They were glowing, burning with an inner light that cast shadows on his cheeks. And his hands. His fingers were tipped with black, curved claws that were an inch long. He looked like a nightmare. He looked like the monster under the bed. "Look at me," he snarled, but there was pain in the sound. "This is what I am, Mia. This is what you let into your life." Mia's heart hammered against her ribs. "Run!" her brain screamed. "He's a wolf. A killer." She took a step back. Alaric flinched. The motion was small, but it broke her heart. He looked at her retreat like he had expected it, like he had been waiting for her to realize he was unlovable. In that moment, she understood. She saw the monster, yes, but she also saw the man who had wrapped her in his coat, the man who had looked at her ruined dress and called her a queen. Mark was a man, and he was cruel. Alaric was a monster, and he was kind. She made a choice. She didn't run away. She took a step forward. Alaric tensed, his claws flexing. "Mia, stay back. I am agitated. I am dangerous." "Are you dangerous to me?" she asked. Her voice was small, but steady. The question hung in the air. Alaric stared at her, his chest heaving. The glow in his eyes flickered. "I would burn the world to ash before I let a scratch appear on your skin." "Then I'm not afraid," she whispered. She closed the distance. It took courage she didn't know she had. She walked right up to him. The heat coming off his body was intense. He smelled wild. She reached out. Her hand trembled, but she placed it flat against the center of his chest, right over his heart. It was beating so fast. Thump, 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 thump. "You're shaking," she murmured. "I am terrified," he admitted. his voice dropping to a rough whisper. That you will see the beast and run. I'm not running, Mia said. She looked up into his burning eyes. You saved me, Alaric. You didn't leave me in the rain. Alaric let out a shuddering breath. The rigidity left his frame. He closed his eyes, slowly, painfully. The claws retracted. The glow in his eyes faded to a deep, warm amber. He covered her hand with his own. His palm was rough, calloused, but his touch was incredibly gentle. You are stronger than you look, little one, he murmured, leaning his forehead against hers. I have to be, she breathed, to stand next to you. In the quiet that followed, surrounded by the smell of violence and sand, Mia realized something. She wasn't just a guest here, and he wasn't just a rescuer. They were two broken things, fitting together to make something whole. And for the first time in her life, she didn't want to be anywhere else.
The peace didn't last. It never did for men like him. Alaric stood on the balcony of the penthouse, the wind whipping his shirt against his chest. He was watching the city lights, but his mind was on the woman sleeping inside. Mia. She had touched his chest. She had looked the monster in the eye and hadn't blinked. For the first time in a century, the knot of tension in his shoulders had loosened. But then, the air grew stale. It brought a scent that made his blood freeze. Not rain, not pine, sulfur, and wolfsbane. A dark shape dropped from the roof above. It wasn't a bird. It was a man. A rogue, dressed in tactical gear, swinging down on a rappel line. He crashed through the glass railing, landing in a crouch 5 feet away. Alaric didn't hesitate. His body moved on instinct. He didn't bother to shift fully. His claws tore through his fingertips, and he lunged. The rogue was fast, but Alaric was a king. He caught the intruder by the throat, slamming him against the brick wall. Who sent you? Alaric roared, his voice shaking the foundations of the building. The rogue didn't speak. He smiled, a bloody, jagged smile. He pulled a pin on his vest. Grenade. Alaric's eyes widened. Flashbang. He threw the man over the railing, into the void below, just as the device detonated. Boom. The explosion wasn't lethal, but the light was blinding. A wall of white noise slammed into Alaric's senses. His ears rang. His vision swam. What followed was chaos. 3 more shadows dropped onto the balcony. They held knives coated in a thick purple paste. Wolfsbane. The only thing that could slow an alpha's healing. Alaric snarled, shaking his head to clear the ringing. He couldn't let them get inside. Mia was inside. He fought like a demon. He accepted a slash to his forearm to deliver a bone-breaking kick to the first attacker's ribs. He took a punch to the jaw to rip the throat out of the second. The pain was sharp, burning like acid where the wolf's bane touched his blood. Yet, he didn't stop. He grabbed the last attacker, lifting him off the ground. Kale. The rogue gargled, blood bubbling on his lips. The Northern Pack sends their regards. Alaric snapped the man's neck. He dropped the body. He stood there, panting, blood dripping from his arm onto the expensive tiles. The threat was gone, but the message was clear. They could reach him here. They had just proven that his fortress was made of glass. He turned toward the shattered glass door. Mia was standing there. She was clutching a blanket, her face pale, her eyes wide with horror. Alaric stepped back, trying to hide his bleeding arm. "Stay back," he rasped. "I am." Messy, but she didn't look at the dead bodies. She looked at him, and she didn't scream.
The smell of blood was heavy in the air. It tasted like copper on her tongue. Mia stood in the shattered doorway, the cold wind blowing glass shards across the floor. She saw the bodies. She saw the violence. But mostly, she saw Alaric. He was swaying. The invincible king was swaying. Blood was pouring from a deep gash on his forearm. It wasn't healing. It was hissing, the flesh turning a sickly gray around the edges. Alaric. She dropped the blanket. Before she could move, he stumbled. He caught himself on the railing, his face twisting in pain. "Do not touch me," he growled, though the sound lacked its usual power. "The poison, it burns." Mia ignored him. She ran across the glass-strewn balcony. She grabbed his uninjured arm, pulling his weight against her shoulder. He was heavy, a wall of solid muscle, but adrenaline gave her strength she didn't know she had. "Inside," she ordered. Her voice was shaking, but her hands were steady. "Now." She guided him to the sofa. He collapsed onto it, his head falling back. The wound on his arm looked angry. "First aid kit," she said, her mind racing. "Where is it?" "Kitchen," he grunted. "Under the sink. But it won't help. It's wolfsbane." Mia ran. She scrambled under the sink, grabbing the white box. She rushed back, falling to her knees beside him. She opened the box. Gauze, antiseptic, tape. She poured the antiseptic over the wound. Alaric hissed, his back arching off the sofa. A low, animalistic snarl ripped from his throat. His eyes flashed gold. "I know," she whispered, tears springing to her eyes. "I know it hurts. I'm sorry." She started to wipe away the black sludge around the cut. Her hands were stained with his blood. It was hot. Because of that heat, she realized something. He wasn't a god. He wasn't a statue. He was flesh and blood, and right now, he needed her. "Why didn't you run?" he rasped, watching her through half-closed lids. "You saw them. You saw me kill. You were protecting me," Mia said softly. She wrapped the gauze tight, applying pressure. "I am a monster, Mia. I bring death to my doorstep." She stopped. She placed her bloody hand against his cheek, forcing him to look at her. "You are not a monster to me," she said fiercely. "You are the man who saved my life, and I am not going to let you bleed out on your own couch." The silence in the room changed. It wasn't fearful anymore. It was charged. He wasn't the king, and she wasn't the stray. She was the anchor holding him to the earth. Alaric stared at her, his expression filled with wonder. He leaned into her touch, closing his eyes. "You should leave," he whispered, his voice thick with pain. "It is not safe." "I'm not going anywhere," she answered. "So you better heal up. We have a war to fight."
The city was no longer an option. By the time the sun began to rise, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange, they were in the motorcade again. But this time, they weren't heading to a party. They were heading to the pack grounds. Alaric sat in the back of the SUV, his arm bandaged and throbbing, but healing. Mia was asleep against his shoulder, her hand still gripping his shirt. He looked out the window as the skyscrapers gave way to trees. Thick, ancient pines. This was the old territory, the place where the magic ran deep in the soil. Here, he was strongest. The car slowed as they approached the massive iron gates of the estate. Guards, wolves in human form, patrolled the perimeter with assault rifles. They pulled up to the main house, a sprawling stone mansion that looked like it had grown out of the mountain itself. Alaric shook Mia gently. "We are here, little one." She woke up, rubbing her eyes. She looked out at the forest. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It looks wild." "It is," Alaric said. "Like us." They stepped out. The air here was different. It smelled of damp earth and freedom, but the peace was short-lived. Silas was waiting on the steps. He looked grim. "Your Majesty," Silas said, bowing stiffly. "We have a problem at the southern border." Alaric stiffened. "An attack?" "No," Silas said. He glanced at Mia, then back to Alaric. "An envoy, under a flag of truce." Alaric felt his hackles rise. "Who?" Silas hesitated. "Mark." The name hung in the air like a curse. Mia gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Mark? Here?" "He says he has information," Silas continued. "He says he wants to apologize. He claims he didn't know about the rogues. He is invoking the law of parley." Alaric let out a low growl. The law of parley was ancient. If a wolf, even a weak one, approached the alpha with a white flag, They were granted safe passage for 1 hour. To kill them was to break the sacred covenant. He is lying, Alaric snarled. He is a worm. I know, Silas said. But the elders are watching. If you kill him without hearing him out, you look like a tyrant. You lose the council's support right when we need it for war. Mark knew this. Cale knew this. It was a political trap. Alaric looked at Mia. She was trembling again. The scent of her fear was sour. I don't want to see him, she whispered. Alaric grabbed her chin, tilting her face up. You do not have to, he vowed. I will go. I will listen. And if he lies, law or no law, I will rip his tongue out. No, Mia said suddenly. She straightened her spine. Her eyes, usually so soft, hardened. I want to see him, she said. Her voice was shaking, but her words were clear. He thinks I'm weak. He thinks I'm just a human, he threw away. I want him to see that he didn't break me. Alaric studied her. He saw the steel beneath the velvet. His chest swelled with pride so fierce it almost hurt. Very well, Alaric said, taking her hand. We go together. But if he takes one step toward you, I end him. The trees rustled, carrying the faint, sickly scent of the enemy. Alaric tightened his grip on his queen's hand. The time for hiding was over. The time for blood had begun.
The forest clearing was silent, but it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the kind of quiet that happens right before a storm breaks. Mia stood next to Alaric. Even so, she felt miles away from the safety of the car. Her hand was tucked into the crook of his arm, and his muscles were hard as rock beneath her fingers. Across the grassy line stood Mark. He didn't look like the arrogant executive from the car. His suit was rumpled. He had dark circles under his eyes. He held a white cloth in his hand, waving it like a flag. Mia, Mark breathed out. He took a step forward, his hands open. Baby, thank God you're okay. Mia stiffened. Alaric let out a low, warning growl. The sound vibrated through her own chest. Stay back, Alaric warned. His voice was low, dangerous. State your business, worm. Mark ignored the king. His eyes were locked on Mia. He put on that sad, puppy dog look, the one he always used when he forgot her birthday or made her cry. Mia, please, Mark said, his voice cracking. I was out of my mind with stress. The deal, the promotion. I just snapped. You know how I get. I came back for you, I swear. I drove up and down that highway for hours, screaming your name. For a second, Mia felt a flicker of the old guilt, the habit of forgiving him. Maybe it was fate that she was just too soft for this world. But then, she remembered the cold. She remembered the rain freezing on her skin while his taillights faded away. In fact, looking at him now, she didn't see the man she loved. She saw a stranger, a small, sad stranger. You didn't come back, Mia said. Her voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. I waited. I did, Mark insisted. He looked at Alaric with fake fear. He has brainwashed you, Mia. Look at him. He's a monster. He's dangerous. Come home with me. I'll make it up to you. I bought you those earrings you wanted. A laugh bubbled up from Mia's chest. It was dry and humorless. Earrings? She asked. You think you can buy me back with earrings after you left me to die? Mark's face fell. The sad mask slipped, revealing the annoyance underneath. She saw something else in his eyes. He wasn't looking at her face. He was looking past her. He was checking the tree line. Something inside her shifted. He wasn't here to apologize. You're lying, she whispered. The realization hit her like a slap. You don't care about me. You never did. Mia, don't be stupid, Mark started, his tone sharpening. No, she cut him off. She stepped away from Alaric, standing on her own 2 feet. I am done being stupid. I am done being quiet. And I am done with you. Mark's jaw tightened. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made, Mia said, lifting her chin, was getting into your car in the first place. Mark's face changed. The sorry boyfriend was gone. A cold, cruel sneer took its place. Fine, Mark spat. He dropped the white flag into the mud. Have it your way, bitch. He reached into his pocket. He didn't pull out a ring. He pulled out a flare gun.
In the span of a breath, the world exploded into chaos. Mark fired the flare. A streak of red light shot up into the gray sky, hissing like a snake. Bang! Get down! Alaric roared. Without thinking, he tackled Mia. He threw his body over hers, driving them both into the tall grass just as the tree line erupted. Howls, dozens of them. They weren't the noble howls of his pack. They were jagged, hungry sounds. Rogues. Moments later, the perimeter fence 50 yards away blew apart. Boom. Wood and metal shrapnel rained down on the clearing. Smoke billowed up, black and thick, smelling of sulfur and wet fur. Alaric! Mia screamed beneath him. Stay down, he commanded. He scrambled to his feet, shifting into a defensive crouch. His eyes scanned the smoke. What followed was a nightmare. Gray wolves poured through the breach in the fence. They were mangy, scarred, and desperate. They didn't care about strategy. They just wanted blood. Silas, Alaric bellowed, protect the queen. Silas and the royal guard were already moving. They shifted mid-stride, clothes tearing as bones cracked and reformed. In seconds, massive timber wolves were clashing with the smaller, faster rogues. Teeth snapped. Fur flew. The sound of bodies slamming together was sickening. Yet, something was wrong. Alaric grabbed a rogue that leaped at him. He caught the wolf in midair, his human hands crushing its throat. He threw the carcass aside. Despite that, the rogues weren't fighting to win. They were fighting to distract. They were swarming the guards, keeping them busy. Alaric spun around, looking for Mark. The human was gone. Suddenly, a scent hit him. It wasn't the rogues. It was something sharper. Something he had smelled at the penthouse. Wolfsbane. Mia's panic spiked through the bond. It was a sharp, jagged needle in his chest. He turned. Mia was still on the ground where he had left her, but the grass behind her was moving. A shadow detached itself from the smoke. It wasn't a wolf. It was a man in tactical gear. Mia, Alaric shouted. He launched himself forward, but then 3 heavy rogues slammed into him from the side. They hit him like a freight train. Alaric went down. He hit the mud hard, the breath driven from his lungs. Claws raked over his back, tearing his shirt, digging into his skin. He roared a sound of pure fury. He shifted. His bones snapped and reshaped with a sickening crunch. In a heartbeat, the man was gone. The alpha wolf stood in his place. He was huge, midnight black, with eyes like burning suns. He snapped his jaws, crushing the spine of the wolf on his back. He threw another into a tree. His head snapped toward Mia. He was too late. The man in the gear had her. He had a cloth pressed over her mouth. Her eyes were wide, filled with absolute terror. Mark stepped out from behind a tree, smiling. He waved at the giant black wolf. Bye-bye, Your Majesty, Mark mocked. Before either could speak, Mark and the soldier dragged Mia backward into a hidden tunnel in the earth that Alaric hadn't known existed.
The cloth smelled sweet, sickly sweet, chloroform. Mia held her breath. Her body moved on instinct. She kicked out, her heel connecting with the shin of the man holding her. He grunted, his grip loosening just a fraction. "Stupid girl," Mark hissed, grabbing her arm. "Stop fighting." They were dragging her into a hole in the ground. It looked like an old drainage pipe, hidden by bushes. It was dark. It smelled like rot. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't break free. The man was too strong. "Alaric!" She tried to scream, but the hand over her mouth smothered the sound into a muffled cry. She saw him. Through the chaos of the fighting, she saw the massive black wolf. He was a blur of violence, tearing through the rogues like they were paper. His golden eyes locked onto hers. The moment their eyes locked, she felt his agony. It wasn't just anger. It was fear. Pure, desperate fear. He lunged toward her. But then, Mark pulled a lever near the tunnel entrance. A heavy steel grate slammed down. Clang. It separated them. The wolf hit the bars a second later. The impact shook the earth. He bit the steel, his fangs sparking against the metal. He snarled, clawing at the ground, trying to dig through. "Let's go," Mark ordered the soldier. "The gas won't hold him for long." They dragged her deeper into the dark. Her chest ached. Her lungs were burning for air. She couldn't hold her breath any longer. She gasped, inhaling the chemical fumes. The world started to spin. Gray spots danced in her vision. Mark leaned close to her ear. His voice was slippery, like oil. "See?" he whispered. "I told you I'd come back for you. Now you belong to me again." Mia felt her strength fading. Her limbs felt heavy. Still, she refused to give up. She gathered the last bit of energy she had. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She bit down, hard. Her teeth sank into the fleshy part of the soldier's hand covering her mouth. She tasted salt and blood. "Gah!" the soldier yelled, jerking his hand back. In that moment, her mouth was free. "I belong to the king!" she screamed. The words echoed down the damp tunnel. Mark slapped her. It was a sharp, stinging blow that knocked her head back. "He can't hear you," Mark spat. "You're going to the north, Mia. And by the time he finds you, if he finds you, you won't even remember his name." As the darkness took her, the last thing she heard was a howl. It wasn't a howl of victory. It was a howl of loss. A sound so broken, so full of grief, that it shattered the last piece of her heart. Then, everything went black.
The steel grate didn't move. Alaric slammed his body against it again. Crack. Pain exploded in his shoulder. His collarbone snapped. But his wolf didn't care. The beast didn't feel pain. It only felt the emptiness where Mia used to be. He bit the metal bars. His fangs scraped against the iron, sparks flying like tiny stars in the dark tunnel entrance. He clawed at the concrete, ripping his nails out by the roots, digging until his paws were slick with his own blood. "Mate! Mate!" The roar inside his head was deafening. It was a scream that tore his soul in half. "Alaric, stop! You can't break it." "Silas," Alaric snarled, turning on his beta. He was a monster of shadow and rage, frothing at the mouth. He wanted to kill anything that stood in his way. Even his brother. Silas didn't back down. He stood there, covered in soot and rogue blood, holding his hands up. "She is gone, brother," Silas said, his voice cracking. "They collapsed the tunnel behind them. If you keep digging, you'll bring the whole mountain down." Alaric stopped. The mountain. He looked at the pile of rubble behind the grate. Silas was right. The tunnel was blocked. Tons of earth stood between him and Mia. She was gone. The realization hit him harder than any bullet. His legs gave out. The massive black wolf collapsed into the mud. He threw his head back and let out a sound that wasn't a howl. It was a sob. A broken, jagged sob that echoed through the trees. The shift took him then. It was violent. His bones rearranged, snapping back into human shape. He lay naked in the dirt, shivering, bleeding from a dozen wounds. But the physical pain was nothing. It was a mosquito bite compared to the hole in his chest. "I failed," Alaric whispered. He stared at his bloody hands. "I had her, and I let them take her." Silas threw a cloak over him. "We tracked the tires on the other side of the ridge. We know where they are going. The industrial district." Alaric didn't move. He felt cold. A deep, freezing cold that started in his marrow. Her scent was fading from the air. The rain was washing it away. He closed his eyes, reaching out with his mind, searching for the bond. It was faint, weak, like a candle flame in a hurricane, but it was there. She was alive. His grief hardened. It froze over, turning into something sharp, something deadly. He opened his eyes. The gold fire was gone. In its place was something darker, the look of a king who had nothing left to lose. Get the car, Alaric said. His voice was dead, flat. And call the war council. I want every wolf in this city ready to kill by midnight. Alaric, Silas warned gently. If we attack the city, the humans will see. The secret will be out. Alaric stood up. He wiped the blood from his lip. Let them see, he said softly. Let the whole world see what happens when they touch my queen.
The smell woke her up. It smelled like rust and old oil. Mia gasped, her eyes flying open. She tried to sit up, but she couldn't. Her hands were tied behind her back. Her ankles were bound to the leg of a heavy metal chair. She was in a warehouse. It was huge, dark, and freezing. Rain hammered against the tin roof high above, sounding like bullets. Finally, a voice sneered. Mia turned her head. Mark was sitting on a crate nearby. He was holding a bottle of water, looking at her with a mix of anger and pity. You've been out for an hour, Mark said. He stood up and walked over. You look terrible, Mia. That dress is ruined. Mia pulled against the ropes. They dug into her wrists, burning her skin. Where am I? She croaked. Her throat felt like sandpaper. Safe? Mark said. He reached out to touch her hair. Mia flinched away. Don't touch me. Mark's hand froze. His eyes narrowed. I saved you, Mia. That beast. He would have killed you. I brought you here to protect you. Protect me? Mia laughed. It was a harsh, broken sound. You drugged me. You dragged me through a tunnel. You are working with the people who tried to kill him. They are my business partners, Mark yelled. The echo bounced off the metal walls. Alpha Kale promised me a seat at the table. Once Alaric is dead, the North takes over, and I get to be the human liaison. We will be rich, Mia. Richer than you can imagine. Mia stared at him. He was delusional. He actually believed he was a player in this game. You are a fool, a deep voice rumbled from the shadows. Mark spun around. A man stepped into the dim light. He was huge, almost as big as Alaric. But where Alaric was noble, this man was jagged. He had a scar running down one eye, and his teeth were filed into points. Alpha Kale. Kale, Mark stammered, putting on his fake smile. I was just explaining to her. Shut up, Kale said. He didn't even look at Mark. He walked straight to Mia. He grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. His fingers were rough, smelling of tobacco and blood. So, Kale grunted, this is the little pet that brought the king to his knees. Mia trembled. She couldn't help it. This man radiated cruelty. I am not a pet, she whispered. Kale chuckled. You have spirit. Good. It will make it more fun when I break you. He let go of her face and turned to Mark. Is the camera ready? Yes, Mark said, fumbling with a tripod set up in the corner. But, Kale, you promised you wouldn't hurt her. We just need to use her as leverage, right? Kale laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. You really are stupid, human, Kale sneered. I don't need leverage. I need bait. I am going to torture her live on stream, and Alaric is going to watch. He will come running into my trap to save her. And then I will take his head. Mark went pale. Torture? That wasn't the deal. Kale backhanded Mark. Crack. Mark flew across the room, crashing into a pile of pallets. He didn't get up. Kale turned back to Mia. He pulled a knife from his belt. The blade was jagged and stained dark. Now, Kale whispered, leaning close. Let's see how loud you can scream. In that moment, Mia thought she would faint. The fear was a black hole trying to swallow her. But then, she thought of Alaric. She thought of how he stood in the rain for her, how he looked at her like she was precious. If she screamed, Alaric would come, and if he came, he would die. She bit her lip. She stared at the knife. I won't give you the satisfaction, she thought. I won't make a sound.
The war room was silent. It was a bunker deep beneath the estate. Maps glowed on the walls. Screens showed live feeds of the city. Alaric stood at the head of the table. He was dressed in black tactical gear. No more suits, no more crowns. He was a soldier now. A medic was stitching the wound on his shoulder. Alaric didn't use anesthesia. The pain kept him focused. It kept the wolf from taking over completely. The northern pack has fortified the old shipyard, Silas said, pointing to a red zone on the map. It's a fortress, snipers, traps, and they have silver. Silver, an elder muttered. He was an old wolf with white hair, sitting at the end of the table. Suicide. If we attack them there, we lose half our men. We are not attacking, Alaric said. His voice was calm, too calm. The medic tied off the stitch and stepped back. Alaric rolled his shoulder. We are not? Silas asked, confused. No, Alaric said. He looked at the screen showing the shipyard. We are exterminating. Your Majesty, the elder stood up. You cannot be serious. Total war in the city limits? The humans will panic. The council will strip you of your title. Alaric turned his head slowly. He looked at the elder. Do you think I care about a title? Alaric asked softly. He walked over to the old man. The room held its breath. They have my mate, Alaric whispered. They have the other half of my soul. If she dies, there is no king. There is only the beast. He leaned in close. And if you talk to me about politics one more time, I will start the killing right here in this room. The elder sat down, his face pale. Suddenly, a laptop on the table beeped. A video feed popped up. Every muscle in Alaric's body locked up. It was Mia. She was tied to a chair. Her face was bruised. There was a cut on her cheek. And behind her, Kyle was holding a knife. Hello, King. Kale's voice scratched through the speakers. Look what I found. Alaric gripped the edge of the table. The steel bent under his fingers. He stopped breathing. Kyle brought the knife to Mia's neck. A thin line of red appeared on her pale skin. Come and get her, Kale smiled. Or I start carving. The screen went black. For a second, nobody moved. The silence in the room was heavy enough to crush bones. Then, Alaric moved. He didn't shout. He didn't roar. He just walked to the gun rack on the wall. He picked up an assault rifle. He picked up a silver-edged sword. He turned to his men. His eyes were no longer human. They were pure, glowing gold fire. Kill them all, Alaric said. Leave no one standing. Burn it to the ground. The bond pulsed with her pain, fueling his steps as he walked out the door. He was coming, and he was bringing hell with him.
The knife was gone, but the stinging cut on her neck remained. Mia sat in the damp gloom of the warehouse, her heart beating a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Kale had stepped away to answer a radio call about perimeter breaches, leaving her alone with Mark. Mark was pacing. He looked sweaty. He kept checking his phone, then glancing at the heavy metal doors. They're early, Mark muttered, wiping his forehead with a shaking hand. The buyers weren't supposed to be here yet. In the quiet that followed, Mia realized something. Mark was terrified. He wasn't a partner in this operation. He was a pawn who had gotten in over his head. Her thoughts spun. She couldn't fight KL. She couldn't fight the soldiers. But Mark? Mark was weak, and she knew exactly where his cracks were. He's going to kill you too, Mia whispered. Mark froze. He spun around, his eyes wide. Shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Mia asked. She forced her voice to be steady, even though she was trembling inside. Kyle is a wolf, Mark. He hates humans. You heard him. He called me a pet. What do you think he calls you? Mark walked over to her, his jaw tight. I am the liaison. I am the reason he got this far. You are a loose end, Mia said softly. She looked him right in the eye. Once he kills Alaric, once he takes the city, do you really think he's going to share the throne with a human executive? Mark flinched. The truth hit him, and she saw the doubt flicker in his eyes. Maybe it was fate that gave her this opening, or maybe it was just desperation, but she pressed harder. Untie me, Mark, she pleaded, shifting her tone from accusatory to soft. To the girl he used to date. If you untie me, we can run. We can leave before the fighting starts. You have money, right? We can disappear. Mark looked at the ropes binding her ankles. He looked at the door where Cale had disappeared. He hesitated. He'll kill me if I let you go. He'll kill you anyway, Mia countered. But if we leave now, we survive. Please, Mark, be the man I thought you were. It was a lie. She knew he was trash. But Mark didn't hear the lie. He heard his own ego being stroked. He knelt, his hands shaking as he reached for the knots at her ankles. Okay, Mark whispered, sweat dripping from his nose. Okay, we go out the back. But you listen to me, Mia. You do exactly what I say. I promise, she lied. He loosened the rope. The pressure on her legs released. Blood rushed back into her feet, stinging like fire. But then, the warehouse door slammed open. Cale marched in. He wasn't alone. 3 massive gray wolves flanked him. Get away from her, Cale roared. Mark scrambled back, falling on his ass. I was just checking the knots. She was struggling. Cale didn't buy it. He marched over and kicked Mark in the ribs. Mark curled into a ball, wheezing. Cale turned his jagged smile on Mia. Nice try, little bird, Cale growled. But your king is here, and I think it's time we gave him a show.
The gate to the shipyard didn't open. It dissolved. Alaric didn't wait for the explosives to clear. He drove the lead armored SUV straight through the burning wreckage of the fence. Metal screamed, tires spun, and the heavy vehicle smashed into the courtyard. Gunfire erupted instantly. Bullets pinged off the armored glass like hail. Go, 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 Silas shouted over the comms. The doors flew open. What followed was not a battle. It was a slaughter. Alaric stepped out. He didn't take cover. He walked straight into the hail of bullets. He was wearing tactical body armor, but it was his aura that did the real damage. He pushed it out a physical wave of alpha dominance that hit the rogue soldiers like a sledgehammer. Men dropped their guns, clutching their heads, vomiting from the pressure. Alaric moved through them. He was a blur of efficiency. He fired his rifle until it clicked empty. Then he used the stock to shatter skulls. He didn't feel pity. He didn't feel mercy. Every man here stood between him and Mia. That meant every man here was already dead. They just didn't know it yet. King, a rogue wolf shifted in front of him, a massive beast with mange-ridden fur. It lunged for his throat. Alaric dropped his gun and drew the silver-edged sword from his back. The blade flashed in the moonlight. The rogue's head separated from its body before its paws even touched the ground. Alaric stepped over the corpse without breaking stride. Where is she? He roared, his voice booming over the sound of gunfire. He grabbed a human mercenary by the vest, lifting him one-handed. The main warehouse, the man screamed, pointing toward a massive corrugated steel building at the end of the dock. Level 2. Cale is there. Alaric threw the man aside. He looked at the warehouse. It was fortified, heavy doors, snipers on the roof. With every step he took, his rage grew hotter. It wasn't the cold anger of the boardroom anymore. It was the volcanic fury of a god whose temple had been desecrated. He started running. Bullets kicked up dust around his boots. He didn't flinch. He focused on the bond. It was stronger now. He could feel her terror. He could feel her heartbeat sinking with his own. I am coming. He projected the thought with everything he had. Hold on, Mia. I am coming. He reached the heavy steel doors. They were locked. Alaric didn't bother with a key. He didn't bother with explosives. He shifted. Clothes shredded. Bones snapped. The midnight black wolf exploded into existence. He was larger than any wolf on the battlefield. A nightmare made of muscle and shadow. He lowered his shoulder and slammed into the steel doors with the force of a battering ram. Boom. The metal groaned, buckled, and then it gave way.
The sound of the door exploding shook the fillings in her teeth. Mia flinched, looking toward the entrance. Through the smoke and twisted metal, a monster emerged. A black wolf, bleeding from a dozen shallow wounds, with eyes that burned like the sun. Alaric, Her soul answered the sight of him. Relief washed over her so powerful it almost made her knees buckle. "Kill her!" Kale screamed. Kyle was standing next to her, still in human form. He realized he had lost. The look on Alaric's face promised a death so slow and painful that Kyle wanted to inflict one last wound before he went down. He raised the knife. Her breath caught. "No!" Mark yelled. To Mia's shock, Mark lunged, not to save her life, but to save his investment. He grabbed Kale's arm. "You can't kill her. She's worth millions." It was a stupid move. Kale snarled and backhanded Mark with supernatural strength. Mark flew across the platform, hitting a stack of crates with a sickening crunch. He slid to the floor, unconscious. But the distraction worked. It bought her a second. In that moment, Mia knew she couldn't just wait to be rescued. Alaric was still 50 feet away, fighting through a wall of rogues who had rushed him. Kale was turning back to her, the knife descending. Her body moved on instinct. She wasn't tied to the chair anymore. Mark had loosened her ankles. She dropped to the ground, kicking out with both legs. She caught Kale in the knee. It didn't break bone, but it surprised him. He stumbled. Mia scrambled backward, crawling toward a rusted industrial control panel. "You bitch!" Kale roared. He shifted, his face elongated, his teeth growing into fangs. He was going to tear her apart. Mia grabbed a heavy metal wrench lying on the floor. It was heavy, greasy, and cold. She didn't throw it at him. She swung it at the steam pipe running along the wall next to Kale's head. Clang. The pipe ruptured. A jet of scalding white steam blasted out with a shriek like a banshee. It hit Kale directly in the face, right as his eyes were changing. "Arg!" Kale howled, blinded, pawing at his face. The steam created a wall of white fog between them. "Alaric!" Mia screamed. She didn't have to wait long. A black shape tore through the steam cloud. Alaric didn't stop to ask questions. He didn't stop to check on her yet. He hit KL in mid-shift. The impact was seismic. Two alphas colliding. One driven by greed, the other driven by a love so violent it could level cities. They crashed into the metal railing, bending it, and fell to the lower level of the warehouse floor. Mia scrambled to the edge, looking down. Alaric was on top. He wasn't fighting with technique. He was fighting with pure, primal hatred. He was ripping Kale apart. But Kale wasn't alone. 3 more rogues jumped on Alaric's back, biting, clawing. Mia's heart hammered in her throat. He was overwhelmed. She looked around. She saw the flare gun Mark had dropped earlier. It was lying near the edge of the platform. She grabbed it. She aimed not at the wolves, but at a stack of oil drums near them. "Burn," she whispered. She pulled the trigger. The flare hit the drums. The oil ignited. A wall of fire whooshed up, separating the rogues from Alaric. They scrambled back, terrified of the flames. Alaric stood up in the ring of fire. He shook the blood from his coat. He looked up at her. And then, he turned back to KL. It was finished.
The heat was suffocating. Flames licked at the ceiling, casting long, dancing shadows against the corrugated steel walls. Alaric stood in the center of the ring of fire. He was in his wolf form, a massive beast of midnight fur and muscle. His chest heaved. Blood thick and metallic dripped from his muzzle. Opposite him, pressed against the scorching metal of the oil drums, was Kale. The rogue alpha was broken. His gray fur was matted, one leg dragging uselessly behind him. He whined, a high-pitched sound of submission that grated on Alaric's ears. Kale shimmered, his form twisted, bones cracking wetly, until he was a man again. A naked, bleeding man, cowering in the dirt. "Mercy!" Kale screamed, holding up his hands. "I yield. By the laws of the pack, I yield." In the silence that followed, the fire roared like an audience waiting for the final act. Alaric didn't shift back. He didn't speak. He stepped forward. His paws were silent on the concrete. Mercy? He thought of the rain. He thought of Mia shivering on the highway. He thought of the knife at her throat and the terror in her scent. Mercy was for honorable men. It was not for monsters who hunted the innocent. Alaric looked up. Through the smoke, on the platform above, he saw her, Mia. She wasn't looking away. She was watching him. Her face was pale, smeared with soot, but her eyes were fierce. She nodded. Once, a queen sentencing a traitor. In that moment, Alaric knew what had to be done. He lunged. Kale screamed, scrambling backward, but he was too slow. Alaric hit him with the force of a falling anvil. Jaws snapped shut. There was a sickening crunch. The scream cut off abruptly. Alaric stood over the body. He felt the life fade from the rogue, the threat dissolving into the ash. It was over. The northern pack was headless. The war ended not with a treaty, but with a corpse. He threw his head back and howled. It wasn't a mournful sound this time. It was a declaration, a warning to every wolf in the city, to every shadow that dared to move against him. She is mine, and I am death to those who touch her. As the echo faded, the fire began to die, suffocated by the sprinklers finally kicking on overhead. Water rained down, mixing with the blood on the floor. Alaric turned. He looked up at the platform. He waited. Would she run, now that she had seen the killer? Would she run?
The sprinklers hissed, creating a curtain of artificial rain. Mia stood at the top of the metal stairs. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash. She gripped the railing, looking down at the carnage. The fire was out. The bodies of the rogues lay scattered like broken toys, and in the center of it all stood the wolf. He was looking at her. His golden eyes were wary. He was panting, his sides heaving, covered in soot and blood. He looked terrifying, a primal force of destruction. And yet, her heart didn't stutter. It soared. She started down the stairs. Her footsteps clanged on the metal. Clang, clang, clang. The wolf took a step back. He lowered his head, flattening his ears. He was ashamed. He didn't want her to see him like this, a monster dripping in violence. "Don't you dare," she whispered. She reached the bottom floor. The water soaked her clothes, making the ruined silk dress cling to her skin. It felt just like the highway, just like the night they met. But this time, she wasn't alone. She walked straight to him. She didn't stop until she was toe-to-toe with the massive beast. The heat radiating off him was intense. "Alaric," she said softly. He whined low in his throat. He wouldn't look at her. He stared at the ground, bracing himself for her rejection. Mia reached out. She buried her hands in the thick ruff of fur around his neck. It was coarse and wet. "Look at me." Slowly. So slowly. He lifted his massive head. The moment their eyes locked, she saw the man behind the beast. She saw the love that had driven him to burn the world down for her. "Thank you," she breathed. She leaned her forehead against his wet snout. She didn't care about the blood. She didn't care about the smell of death. She just held him. A tremor went through his massive body. The shift took him. It wasn't violent this time. It was fluid. The fur retracted. The bones settled into human form. She was holding the man. Alaric fell to his knees, wrapping his arms around her waist, burying his face in her stomach. He was naked, vulnerable, and shaking. "I thought I lost you," he rasped, his voice broken. "I thought I lost you." "You didn't," Mia whispered, stroking his wet hair. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." "King!" Silas's voice shouted from the entrance. Guards were rushing in, securing the perimeter. Two of them were dragging a groggy, handcuffed Mark between them. Mark looked up. He saw Mia holding the naked king. He saw the dead Alpha Kale. "Mia!" Mark cried out, desperate. Tell them I helped you." Mia didn't even flinch. She looked at Mark over Alaric's shoulder. "Take him away," she said coldly. Alaric stood up. He didn't bother to cover himself. He stood tall, pulling Mia against his side. He looked at his guards. "The war is over," Alaric announced. "Take the traitor to the dungeons. Tonight, the city belongs to the queen."
3 weeks later, the Grand Hotel ballroom was glowing. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm, golden light over the crowd. Champagne flowed like water. The air smelled of expensive perfume and fresh flowers. Alaric stood at the top of the marble staircase. He was wearing a new tuxedo, tailored to perfection. He held a glass of whiskey, but his hand was steady. He wasn't bored tonight. He looked out at the crowd. The elite were there, the pack elders, the politicians. They were all looking up, their faces a mixture of awe and fear. They knew what had happened at the shipyard. The rumors had spread like wildfire. The king had killed an alpha with his teeth to save his mate. As a result, nobody dared to whisper. Nobody dared to plot. "Nervous?" he asked quietly. Beside him, Mia took a breath. She was breathtaking. She wore a gown of liquid gold that hugged every curve. Her hair was swept up, revealing the diamond necklace that rested against her throat. But it wasn't the jewels that made her shine. It was her eyes. They were clear, confident. "No," Mia said, squeezing his arm. "I'm not nervous. I'm ready." She looked at him. There was no trace of the broken girl from the rain. She had walked through fire and come out forged in steel. "They are waiting for you," Alaric murmured, leaning down to kiss her temple. "They are waiting for us," she corrected him. She was right. The music swelled. The announcer's voice boomed over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, His Majesty, King Alaric Torvak, and Her Majesty, Queen Mia." The doors swung open. Alaric offered his arm. Mia took it. Her grip was strong. As they began to descend the stairs, the entire room bowed. It wasn't a polite bow. It was a deep, reverent submission. They bowed to the power. They bowed to the survivor. Alaric felt his chest swell. For 100 years, he had walked these stairs alone. He had ruled a kingdom of empty rooms and silent cars. But then, he looked at the woman beside him. She smiled at him, a secret, intimate smile that was just for him. The void in his soul was gone. He squeezed her hand. "Shall we?" he asked. "Let's go," she whispered. And together, the alpha and his discarded queen walked into their future, ruling a world that had tried to break them and failing.